It's pretty easy to assume that the safety we feel every day is just a permanent feature of modern life. But that feeling of security, it actually depends on some incredibly complex systems that most of us rarely, if ever, think about. Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we dig into the hidden systems that shape our world.
So let's just start with that big question right there. Is the safety we all experience day to day just a given? Is it the natural state of things, or is it something that's actively built and maintained? This question, well, it's at the very heart of everything we're going to explore today. To even begin to answer that, we first need to look at the model we're living in right now. Modern societies, for the most part, run on a centralized security system. Basically, governments, through the police, the courts, and the military, hold what's called a monopoly on the legitimate use of force. This whole system is designed to manage conflict and keep the public safe so we can all go about our lives. A really helpful way to picture this is to think of it like a giant, invisible structural scaffold. As long as that scaffold of government, law enforcement, and just our shared expectations is standing strong, we can build our entire lives on top of it without ever worrying if the foundation is about to crumble. It's the hidden infrastructure of social order.
And this is where our thought experiment really kicks off. What happens when all those systems we rely on, the ones that manage risk and enforce the rules, what if they just vanish? How does our behavior change when that safety net is suddenly gone?
To explore this idea, we're going to turn to a pretty unusual source, a tactical manual, one that's actually designed for a world where society's systems have totally failed. It gives us this really unique window into how social order might get rebuilt from the ground up.
The book is called Contact, a tactical manual for post-collapse survival by Max Velocity. Now, this isn't about predicting some crazy future. It's more of a practical look at what happens when the job of providing security shifts from huge institutions back to us, to individuals, and to small groups.
And just listen to the book's purpose here. It's not written for soldiers or police officers. It's for regular, law-abiding citizens who suddenly find themselves in a world without any of that. The whole premise is a complete 180-degree flip of our modern world. So without that societal scaffold holding everything together, the rules for just staying safe change completely. The manual suggests that survival and order, they no longer depend on laws or calling the police. Instead, they depend on 3 totally new core principles that have to be built from scratch. And these are the 3 pillars that replace that old institutional order. First, awareness. Second, coordination within your small group. And third, a completely new way of thinking about defense. So let's break each of those down. Okay, first up, awareness. Think about it. When you can't just call 911, your ability to see a threat coming is your single most critical asset. The manual puts it bluntly, complacency kills. You have to be your own first responder, which means constant vigilance and early detection are absolutely everything. All right, next is coordination, because let's be real, nobody can survive this alone. Trust completely shifts away from those big, faceless institutions to the people you actually know. Small, cooperative groups, like families or neighbors, they have to create their own rules, their own security, their own little miniature societies. And finally, that brings us to defense. In this new reality, being able to defend your group isn't just for emergencies anymore. It becomes a powerful deterrent. It sends a message. This diagram from the manual shows the principle of all-round defense, this idea of 360-degree awareness, because threats can now come from literally any direction. Now, since this is a tactical manual, you'd probably expect it to be all about conflict and fighting, right? But what's fascinating is that its most important piece of strategic advice is actually the exact opposite, and it reveals something really profound about a world without systems. The number one tactic is avoidance. But why? Why would that be the main rule? Well, because without doctors or hospitals or a functioning justice system, even a tiny conflict can spiral into a total catastrophe. A small injury can become fatal. A simple argument can turn into a devastating cycle of revenge. The cost of conflict is just way too high. So what does this whole thought experiment really tell us about our own stable world? This is where we get to the core of the crisis in perception. This slide just puts it all in such sharp contrast. See, our world relies on centralized enforcement, on trusted institutions, and on systems designed to manage conflict. But in a collapsed world, all of that gets replaced by group coordination, trust between people you know, and a desperate need to avoid conflict at all costs.
It just makes you realize what our hidden systems are doing for us every single day. And this is the heart of it all. The crisis in perception is that we tend to believe that social order is just the natural state of things. But what this case study shows us is that it's not. It's an engineered reality, one that is actively constructed and maintained by that invisible scaffold we so often take for granted. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, first, that our stability isn't an accident. It's a direct product of institutional design. Second, that this order is actively held in place by some really complex systems. And finally, it shows us just how fragile that order can become when the systems that coordinate all of our behavior just disappear. And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative question to think about. If our peaceful society is actually an engineered creation, what does it require from all of us every single day to keep it running? And what happens if we stop? Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools can help us all see a little more clearly. This project is totally free and accessible to everyone. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research that go into our work, you can become a supporter on Patreon. And for a much longer audio-based analysis of this topic, be sure to check out the deep dive. We've linked it for you in the description below. And hey, if you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please do us a favor and like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to explore next. Thanks so much for watching.